So serious questions have been raised about architect Minenhle Makhanya following the release of the Public Protector's findings on Nkandla. Thuli Madonsela said Makhanya's multiple and conflicting roles in this project led to the scale of it escalating and resulted in cost escalation and poor contractor performance. We get the views now of the South African Institute of Architects, and we're joined on the line by Chairperson Eugene Barnard. Mr. Barnard, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Let's just start with this one, perhaps. To your knowledge, do you know if this Mr. Makhanya is registered with the South African Institute of Architects?
I don't think he's a member of the Institute of Architects. Whether he's registered with the South African Council for the Architectural Professions, is also another question. I don't have information on him, no.
Is it a requirement of the trade to be registered with some reputable national body?
Yes, look, there is a registration council that was brought about by Act 44 of 2000, the South African Council for the Architectural Profession, and every architect has to be registered with the council to be able to practice as an architect. The Institute is a voluntary association. You don't have to be a member of the Institute, although it is it acts to the benefit of its members, but the council is mandatory.
To your knowledge, Mr. Barnard, can an architect be held accountable for a scenario such as this one, in which the architect overran costs to the tune of millions of rands? I think the projected estimate was just under R500,000, and he's walked away, according to the Public Protector, with over 16 million rand.
Yes, ma'am, that will depend to a very large extent on the agreement between the architect and the client. The council requires of every professional to enter into an agreement, and the agreement will stipulate the terms of the engagement of the architect and the professional fees that he will earn, or the methodology that will determine what his fee is. It's very difficult, without knowing the facts, whether there was improper conduct. When a project is properly managed from inception through to execution, then one of the aspects of that project is that finances is generally well controlled. So.
Yeah, I think in this scenario, as you rightly point out, he can't be blamed for his greed, what was overt greed according to this report, if he was unchecked by the people paying him, namely the Department of Public Works. But just in general, Mr. Barnard, to prevent corruption through overpricing, what are some of the rules and regulations which govern, architects that could prevent that?
Well, as I mentioned, the most important thing is to have an agreement up front which sets out the methodology of calculating the fee. Secondly, the brief by the client initially is very important, because the brief will indicate the scope of the work. Now, if the brief is not accurately set out initially, then there's the only way of controlling what happens from that point forth is, especially in the case of government, is that every variation to the initial contract, if there was an initial contract with an initial budget, every variation to that contract should be approved, and there are regulations in government that determine the methodology of approving variations. So normally, the client body, being the Department of Public Works, would prescribe, and the professional, being the architect, would respond to the prescriptions.
Just very quickly, and this is my final question to you, Mr. Barnard, just to educate us who don't know, in the compilation, the construction of a brief, how complex a process is that? What factors go into that?
Yes, look, with a knowledgeable client, it's not difficult to write up the brief. The Department of Public Works has been doing that for many, many years. So the brief would really indicate what the specific needs are, the areas, the norms that govern the sizes of facilities, the specifications that would apply to services, whether air conditioning should or should not be included. And the more comprehensive the brief is, obviously the easier it is to manage the project. So the brief really and the agreement with the professionals is the foundation of a project.
All right, thank you for some of those valuable insights. Eugene Barnard represents the South African Institute of Architects.
Know more about your world. eNCA.com